10,201 miles. This is the length of the monarch migration from start to finish, from Mexico to Canada and back again. 10,201 miles. This might seem like a pretty long distance for a bike ride. But for Sara Dykman, that wasn't a deterrent. Dykman's longing to accompany the monarchs on their annual flight drew her off the metaphorical beaten path, but more literally smack dab on the path, on the trail, whether that be dirt or gravel roads, highways or byways, as she bicycled the entire migratory route of the monarchs. I was drawn to Dykman's story because it's a story of getting proximate. I learned the power of proximity from social justice activist Bryan Stevenson. You may have heard of him. He's a champion of anti-racism and the creative mind behind the Equal Justice Institute. And he also was our 𝑒𝐿𝐴 lecturer in 2017. Bryan Stevenson teaches that proximity is the mother of empathy, that getting close helps us to become compassionate. Closeness creates compassion. It's only when we get close to one another that we can truly listen and open our hearts to the experiences of those who are different than us. And side note, we're all different from each other. Some just more or less. The power of proximity is not a new teaching, however. It's not a recent phenomenon. This is just new language. It's part of our human experience. I dare say it always has been. We'll give another couple of examples you may be familiar with. There was, in ancient days, a rabbi, they called him Jesus. Heard of him? Informed by the Jewish teachings of his family's religion, the religion of his family of origin, the teachings of the Torah, embodied this imperative from Leviticus that says, love your neighbor as yourself. This foundational principle of Jewish ethics led Jesus to spend his life getting close to those on the margins who were estranged from society, expanding the concept of what a neighbor meant beyond your close community to include all those in need. This is not so dissimilar from the Buddhist story of Siddhartha, who after spending years confined to a castle, not exposed to much difference, leaves the cloistered halls to venture out beyond those walls and encounters people who are suffering or sick or aging or dying. Siddhartha's proximity to the suffering of others opens his heart, and he is transformed, and he dedicates his life to the path of compassion, aiming not only to end suffering for himself, but to end the suffering for all beings. He won't stop, and he begs us not to stop until all are free from suffering. The question of who is our neighbor is important to both of these stories, and it's important to Sara Dykman's bicycling with the butterfly story as well. Opening the door to our neighbors in a spiritual sense invites us to have empathy for those who not only live beside us, but for all beings who share our planet. This includes not only our human kin, or what ecologist and philosopher David Abrams calls the more than human world. All of our neighbors in the natural world, the more than human world that we are but a small part of. I discovered Sara Dykman's story when researching a sermon with the working title, Welcoming Our World. You probably thought it was the other way around, that I read an interesting book and that I decided to write a sermon about it, right? No, it didn't happen that way. I wanted to write about welcoming the natural world, the power of welcoming relationship with our natural world, but I knew that the entirety of our natural world was too immense a subject for a single sermon. I needed something smaller. A smaller subject in the wide expanse of flora and fauna, and for some unknown reason, my spirit landed on the butterfly. So I started looking. To my surprise, I found 2 books on butterflies that piqued my interest, and I bought them both, and I began my own journey, learning from Lepidoptera, or Befriending the Butterfly. The first book wasn't Sara Dykman's book. The first book that I read was by author Wendy Williams, titled The Language of Butterflies: How Thieves, Hoarders, Scientists, and Other Obsessives Unlock the Secrets of the World's Favorite Insect. My apologies to Wendy Williams, because actually my favorite was the other book, and I was a little bit judgmental of her approach. Very well researched. The Washington Post calls Williams' book a glorious and exuberant celebration of these biological flying machines. Williams takes us on a humorous and beautifully crafted journey that explores both the nature of these curious and highly intelligent insects and the eccentric individuals who coveted them. Do you feel our culture like all up in there? This review from the Post captures the flavor of this book. It's the spirit of capturing a specimen and pinning it inside a glass case for close-up inspection and admiration of our own desire. She enjoys a lingering glance over the history of human butterfly obsession. It's interesting, kind of chilling. Sara Dykman's book, on the other hand, while on a similar subject, is entirely different in approach. While a butterfly chaser, she is anything but a thief or a hoarder. And I'm going to pause here. This isn't in the script, but I just wish you could visualize these 2 different authors. If they were standing in front of us, you know which one you would give authority to. The glossy academic, right? Not the girl on the bicycle. Not the young girl who's kind of dirty from sleeping in a lot of ravines or side of the road. She's not an academic, but she is a learned person from direct experience. Back to the sermon. While a butterfly chaser, Sara Dykman is anything but a thief or a hoarder. Her memoir, Bicycling with the Butterflies, My 10,201-Mile Journey Following the Monarch Migration, is emblematic of a love that defies greed to obsessively hoard these beautiful and delicate winged creatures. She rode beside them, and she watched them be born and die, and she reveled in their flight. Her bicycle journey was a sustained effort to raise awareness and advocate for these endangered species. She wasn't just doing it because she liked them. She was doing it because she loved them. And she believed that doing this incredible journey with them would help them, would raise awareness for them. Because they are endangered. That means they're dying. Their entire species might become extinct. Rather than hunting them to pin them down, Dykman chose to ride alongside them in order to bring them back to life. Pause for a moment and just imagine if these creatures didn't exist. Your children or grandchildren will never see them. Can you imagine that? Dykman's memoir is, in the words of Dr. Jane Goodall, we all know who she is, an extraordinary story in which Sara Dykman seamlessly weaves together science and a real love of nature. The book is a lament for our thoughtless destruction of nature and at the same time a celebration of the beauty that remains. The migration of the monarch butterflies is one of the wonders of the world. We must save it for future generations. So, my personal relationship with monarchs probably began as a child, as many of ours do. They capture the attention and love of children so easily. But I had my first intimate encounter with monarch migration while I was living in the northwestern panhandle of Florida. Sometime around October or so, it might have been late September, sometime around this time of year or maybe a month later, my family and I took a day trip to Mashes Sands Beach. And we hung out on a long and mostly deserted strip of sand. We were drumming, we were playing in the gentle waves of the Gulf. We were exploring tide pools and a trillion tiny snails and peaceful reverence of nature's quiet majesty. It felt like it was our own. And as we were leaving the beach that day, we began to see butterflies. First, I just saw one butterfly fly across the Gulf, and then two, and then dozens of monarch butterflies flying from the land over the water, fluttering over the Gulf towards Mexico. I can't really describe how amazed I was at their strength, at their ability to fly out over that ocean that was beyond my capacity, right? Their strength and endurance to fly such an unfathomable distance despite their light and airy appearance, it struck me. And at the point of the year that we are now, late September, monarchs have begun their annual descent to warmer climates where they will overwinter. These winged creatures know no borders between countries. They need no visas or passports to cross over the invisible lines that divide our shared North American continent. They're a reminder that this is all one land. Their home is broad, sweeping over incredible, vast distances, and yet smaller than we can imagine, beginning as babies inside a single milkweed plant, and famously cocooned in a chrysalis during their metamorphosis before transforming from caterpillar to winged beauty. And an interesting thing about the monarch migration is that somewhere inside of them lies a knowing of which direction to fly. Imprinted into their DNA is the map of the migratory route that spans generations. The butterflies that leave Mexico in the winter are not the same butterflies that return to Mexico the following year. Over the course of their migratory journey, multiple generations of monarchs will be born and will die. And a perpetual process of regeneration that ensures the survival of their species from one year to the next. The entire sermon could be about that. What is it to be in a relay with the generations, knowing that the future generations will get where is planned someday? Unfortunately, their predictable persistence has been disrupted as in recent years due to human interference. This is very widely known. I would be surprised if most of you didn't know this. Their beloved milkweed plant has dwindled from fields and roadsides, and without this literal mother's milk of their infant meal, butterfly eggs have no home to take up residence in, and so the next generation cannot be born, cannot thrive. In addition to this, more complex variables from global warming to climate weirding, I like that term, have caused stronger winds, different temperatures and weather patterns, and created less than ideal and at times even hostile environments for the monarchs. Even changes in the forest canopies. Have you seen the images of how they overwinter in trees? Even changes in the forest canopies where they overwinter in Mexico or Southern California can be enough to send an entire colony to the forest floor where they die. It was with this knowledge and compelled by the desire to make a difference that Sara Dykman took up the cause to root for these small creatures. And yet her determination to save a single species became so much more. It connected her to so much more than just the butterfly. Bicycling with the Butterflies, her book, is more than a book about a bicycle tour of North America tracking these incredible black and orange winged creatures. Her journey led her across fields and through forests and into the homes of strangers. Remember about welcoming our neighbor? These strangers took care of her along the way. While she biked to get closer to the butterflies, others opened their doors to her. It was as if her instinct to forge her new friendships with these small creatures compelled others to trust her and to open their hearts to her as well. This is how the energy of welcome spreads. Along the way, Dykman made friends across country lines and state lines and cultures, charting a route that defied these dividing lines. She spent time in ditches, mesmerized by milkweed. I mean, seriously, her book is really good. She fell in love with so much more than a winged species of insect. Her journey may have begun with butterflies, but forgive the pun, it winged out into so much more. It evolved, it metamorphosized into a movement to save not just butterflies, but in Mary Oliver speak, the family of things that we are all a part of. Dykman's journey, while it might seem like the journey of one person to save one species, it exemplifies how false the narrative of individualism really is. Individual people, individual species, right? We as a species versus the world that we live in. And she didn't journey alone. She was supported by a complex network of community along the way. She was carried on the wind of kindness. She singularly did bike all those miles. Yes, mostly it was a solitary ride. She definitely had self-determination and grit. It's pretty remarkable. She did that. No one else. And yet, if this was just about a personal journey or a solitary interest in biking the monarch migration, just for me, just because I want to see, this wouldn't have happened. This book wouldn't have happened. We wouldn't be talking about her today. Dykman did this not just for the butterflies, but for all of us, you see. Along the way, she shared her message with schools. That was part of her journey. And as her story spread, the schools kept inviting her, because the teachers and the parents and the children felt it was important enough to listen. Dykman's story is a living embodiment of what the writer Starhawk calls power with. Have you heard of these power terms? We'll get into that another time. But power with is the kind of leadership power one has because others are genuinely interested and believe that what we have to say is valuable. Without the interest of others, a leader doesn't have power with. It's just themselves. The community engagement and the way Dykman shared her story connected the butterfly's journey to the larger family of things. And as we know, all parts of life are connected with all other parts of life, just like we are. Butterflies are connected with other parts of life, including, but not limited to, we already mentioned, their primary food, the milkweed, but also to forests and rain clouds and sunshine and wind and even to their predators. Everything is interconnected. And this interconnectedness also includes us as either their observers and hoarders or their allies, sometimes hoarding or obsessive, sometimes neglectful or voyeuristic, sometimes creatures of compassion whose empathy and curiosity spurs us to protect beauty and create more magic for ourselves and the generations to come. We each have our own souls, journeys, and our own callings to dedicate ourselves to in life. Thank goodness we don't all have to bike that 10,201 miles. Despite our individual uniquenesses, each person is interconnected and bound up to the family of all. We're all connected, each and every one of us. And a journey to save any single part of this world is, in fact, a journey to save us all. So, how do we do this? I ask you, what is your butterfly journey today? Even if it's just a trip across the room, maybe not all the way up to Canada. I believe the answer to this lies in relationship. I do think it could be a trip across the room to connect with someone here. Who is our neighbor? Is a question I invite us to reflect upon. I'll give you some answers, but you have others that I'm curious to share. A neighbor is someone who we are in relation with. Our neighbors are not limited to the human family, but extend to the more than human world that surrounds us, that we're a part of. And Dykman's journey with the butterflies is exemplary not only of a mashup between athleticism and activism, but of a person who has stretched beyond the narrow view of human importance to include compassion for all living things. There are many ways to love. In all ways of loving, proximity is paramount. Proximity, getting close, bending down to greet the milkweed, examining that small green stalk, taking a breath from your front porch, walking with your feet in direct connection to the earth from time to time, the sand, the grass, the dirt, the soil, following your attention, your curiosity, your desire to connect, to get proximate, just like Sara did, and seeing where it leads. May we all be blessed with loving relationships between our kindreds all around us, giving and receiving in all manner of ways, and may we, each and every one of us, learn to befriend the butterfly in our own unique way. Amen, 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 and blessed be.